Somewhere between Florida, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico lies a region where ships vanish, planes disappear, and explanations dissolve into speculation. This is the Triangle Files. Good Wednesday evening and welcome to this edition of From the Tomb with Cadoom. I am your host, Lucas Cadoom Cadoo. Today we are getting into the Triangle Files second episode, the Bermuda Triangle. We are taking a look into the geographic location, the birth of the legend, three major cases, the possible theories behind it, and some of the possible real-life explanations today. So without further ado, let's get into it. Here we go with the Triangle series, Bermuda Triangle. The Bermuda Triangle sits in the Atlantic Ocean. It is a loosely defined triangle connecting Miami, Florida, Bermuda, and San Juan, Puerto Rico. It's not defined specifically, so it's only estimated to cover 500,000 to 1.5 million square miles. This area is also known for being crucial to cruise ships heading towards the Bahamas and Puerto Rico, and aircraft heading towards Florida, the Caribbean, and South America. The legend starts in the mid-20th century from disappearances such as the USS Cyclops, Flight 19, and the passenger planes Star Tiger and Star Ariel. The term Bermuda Triangle became popular in 1964 by Vincent Gaddis in a magazine article that linked the incidents into an unexplained pattern of phenomenon. Some of the real-life explanations would be that of severe weather, ocean currents, rogue waves, navigational challenges, magnetic anomalies, and human error. But is all that occurring in this notorious geographical triangle? Or is there more going on along the paranormal front that explains some of these disappearances? The Bermuda Triangle has become a cultural icon symbolizing mystery and human fascination with the unknown in books, movies, and documentaries, though interest has sort of fallen off due to modern navigation and improved weather forecasting, reducing the number of unexplained disappearances. Supposedly, while the triangle has captured attention for years, they say it is no more dangerous than any other part of the ocean, and most occurrences can be explained by nature or human error. Amongst all that real-life reasoning, we have some possible, more out-there theories ranging from magnetic anomalies and methane gas all the way to Atlantis technology and aliens. Today we're going to take a look at three of the most well-known cases, well-publicized cases, and we've already mentioned them a little bit, and that's going to be the USS Cyclops, the Star Tiger, and Flight 19. All of these happened in the early 1900s and were major influences on the development of the lore of the Bermuda Triangle. So let's unravel the mystery a little bit and crack open the tomb and start looking at our first case of the day. First up, we have Flight 19. At 2:10 p.m. on December 5th, 1945, a group of 5 TBM Avenger torpedo bombers took off from U.S. Naval Air Station Fort Lauderdale for a navigational training flight. The unit was dubbed Flight 19. The flight leader of the unit, Lieutenant Charles Carroll Taylor, who had about 2,500 flying hours on top of completing the combat tour in the Pacific Theater during World War II. He and his crew of 13 airmen, some trainee pilots, were going to execute navigation problem number 1. A series of maneuvers and instructions to follow on the training flight. The weather that day appeared standard except for some scattered showers through the day. The takeoff and beginning of the flight were extremely normal. The crew dropped the bombs at Hen and Chicken Shoals at 2:30 p.m. Then at 3 p.m., a recording shows that the last student pilot asked to and was permitted to drop his last bomb. Flight 19 turned and started making its way to the second leg of the exercise. And that is when things went wrong. At 4 p.m., a radio message was intercepted from the flight. One of the student pilots was asked for a compass reading, to which he replied, "I don't know where we are. We must have gotten lost after that last turn." Then Lieutenant Taylor can be heard saying, "Both my compasses are out, and I am trying to find Fort Lauderdale. I'm over land, but it's broken. I am sure I'm in the Keys, but I don't know how far down, and I don't know how to get to Fort Lauderdale." Shortly after, one of the planes called into Naval Air Station Fort Lauderdale to report that they were lost. The Naval Air Station tried many suggestions, from switching frequencies to the search and rescue frequency to imploring Taylor turn on his YG IFF transmitter so that his location could be triangulated. These attempts were ignored by Taylor and the rest of his crew for unknown reasons. A later recording can be heard that says, "Damn it, if we could just fly west, we would get home. Head west, damn it." Taylor then ordered the flight east. By this time, the weather had gotten terrible and the sun had set. A few local radio stations were able to triangulate Flight 19 to somewhere north of the Bahamas, far off the coast of Florida, but it never got reported to Naval Air Traffic Control. At 6:20 p.m., the last message from Flight 19 was received. In this recording, Taylor was heard saying, "All planes close up tight. We'll have to ditch and less landfall. When the first plane drops below 10 gallons, we all go down together." All 14 airmen involved in Flight 19 were never seen or heard from again. But these men were not the only ones to go missing that day. Knowing the planes would run out of fuel by 8 p.m., a rescue effort was launched at 6 p.m. to find Flight 19 just before the last message was received. Surface vessels, both military and merchant, were notified of the disappearance, and 2 consolidated PBM Mariner flying boats were diverted from their original training flights to participate in a grid search in an attempt to locate any trace of Flight 19. One of these planes, PBM 5, Bureau number 59225, took off from Naval Air Force Station Banana River in Florida at 7:27 p.m., carrying 13 rescue personnel. The plane called a routine message a few minutes later, but disappeared off of the radar entirely within around 20 minutes of takeoff. That night, a merchant ship off Fort Lauderdale reported seeing a burst of flame shortly before passing through an oil slick in the same vicinity as the PBH had fell off the radar. The Navy launched an even larger rescue effort at daybreak, having to search for now 6 downed aircraft. The effort lasted around 5 days and covered about 300,000 square miles. Theories range from alien abductions to secret government experiments to, of course, the Bermuda Triangle effect. Officially, it was said that Taylor mistook his location due to the broken compasses. He was unable to correct this issue, and eventually they all ran out of fuel, forcing them to down their planes and succumb to the elements. Also to be noted, the disappearance of the PBM-5 is most attributed to an explosion because they were commonly exploding in this particular model during flight. What do you think? Was it aliens? Was it some kind of energy vortex created in the Bermuda Triangle that allows things to pass through to other dimensions or realities? Was it the government conducting secret experiments that just made the planes disappear, whether it would be cloaking or new technology to hide things from the radar? Or is it just part of the pattern that takes place in the Bermuda Triangle? Let's get into the next case and find out. That being the case of the USS Cyclops. The USS Cyclops was built in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. She was 540 feet long and 65 feet wide. It was a Proteus-class collier and could carry 12,500 tons of coal while making 15 knots with the twin engines. When the U.S. declared war on Germany in April of 1917, support ships such as the Cyclops fell under the command of the Navy. The Cyclops' final mission was to transport 9,960 tons of coal from her home port in Norfolk to Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, and bring back 11,000 tons of manganese. She departed January 9th, 1918, and arrived in Rio on January 28th. She stayed 2 weeks unloading and loading cargo. Then on February 15th, 309 souls departed for Bahia, Brazil, the only scheduled stop before Baltimore, Maryland. 2 days later, at 6 p.m., February 22nd, the ship left for Maryland. She was supposed to arrive on March 13th. The last known location of the Cyclops was an unplanned stop made at Barbados on March 3rd, with only 1,800 miles left to go on the journey. After this stop, the passengers and crew were never seen again. Even after 100 years, their fate still remains unknown. 51 years later, Conrad A. Nervig, an officer who transferred off the Cyclops in Rio, wrote an article for the U.S. Naval Institute Proceedings in 1969 about the problematic ship and crew. He described Lieutenant Commander George W. Worley as gruff, eccentric, salt of the old school, given to carrying a cane but possessing few other cultural attainments. He was a very indifferent seaman and a poor, overly cautious navigator. Unfriendly and taciturn, he was generally disliked by both his officers and men. Nervig blamed an incident of an engine getting turned over while a sailor was nearby that knocked the sailor overboard, causing him to drown, on the captain, who created a thoroughly demoralized and disorganized crew because of his irrational methods of command. The greatest mystery behind the Cyclops' disappearance is the cause. Nervig theorized that the Cyclops was split down the middle and quickly sank. He believes the manganese ore could have been stored only in the holds, therefore accentuating the vessel's weaknesses, probably caused by the only officer with experience loading manganese being placed under arrest and confined to his room due to a, quote, trivial disagreement with the captain. A second theory arises, though, because the Cyclops disappeared in the Bermuda Triangle. Richard Weiner investigates the Cyclops' disappearance for his 1973 documentary, The Devil's Triangle, a well-known nickname for the Bermuda Triangle. He suggested a failed mutiny and implied there was problems on the ships, supporting Nervig's claims. Other theories range from the manganese exploding to the boat capsizing to a kraken rising out of the sea and dragging the ship down. Another theory is that it was brought down by German U-boats, since this was during the times of World War II. But post-war records show that there were no U-boats in the area at this time of the disappearance. There were also reports that the captain had been neglecting maintenance on the ship, suggesting hull damage, engine failure, and separation of pipes. We may never know the truth about what happened to the USS Cyclops, but we do know, on that day in the Bermuda Triangle, 309 souls were lost and haven't been found in over 100 years. We're starting to notice a small pattern in this Bermuda Triangle, aren't we? So in the comments, leave your ideas. What do you think the main theory is? Is there some kind of energy vortex? Are aliens abducting these vessels and people? If they are just natural, common occurrences, why aren't we finding wreckage or traces of these ships and planes? What could have happened? Where could they have gone? Let's see what the next case tells us. And this brings us to January 30th of 1948 and the Star Tiger. A Tudor aircraft was on its way to Bermuda. Star Tiger was the third Tudor Mark IV aircraft ordered by British South American Airways, manufactured by the Avro Corporation. The Tudor Mark IV was a relatively new model, only having a history of 575 total flight hours since it was first launched. Yet there had been no incidents or accidents or malfunctions. The first leg of the journey was from Lisbon to Santa Maria in the Azores. It was supposed to be a quick refueling stop, but due to weather conditions, they postponed the second leg of the trip to Bermuda for one day. So on January 29th, the flight took off from Santa Maria to Bermuda with 25 passengers on board. The captain had decided to fly at 20,000 feet to avoid strong headwind that had originated particularly due to the Gulf Stream at the Atlantic, and even more so in the winter. It was a 12-hour journey from Santa Maria in Azores. At 3:15 a.m., the radio operator of the craft received the radio position of the plane. It was set to land at 5 a.m. in 1.5 hours' time. 25 passengers on board would see the marine lights of Bermuda, but 5 a.m. came and went, and the Star Tiger never landed. In fact, it was never seen from or heard from again. The Bermuda Tower operator had tried to contact Star Tiger at 3:50 a.m. and at 4:40 a.m., but got no responses, and after the 4:40 attempt, declared a state of emergency. There was no trace of the flight, and no distress call raised by long past 5, which was the scheduled arrival time when Star Tiger received the position at 3:15. At this point, the U.S. Army Air Force launched a massive rescue operation that had 26 aircraft flying for 883 hours to search for the Star Tiger. The operation lasted for 5 days and was abandoned due to bad weather. They had found zero trace of the flight, the passengers, or the crew. On January 31st, 1948, the news of the World War II veteran Sir Arthur Conningham's death on this flight shared the front page with Gandhi's assassination and the death of Orville Wright. The British Aviation Ministry immediately grounded the other 2 Tudor aircraft owned by British South America Airlines, only eventually releasing them for cargo operations. The ministry also initiated an investigation that lasted for 7 days. The team came back with a lot of observations on what could not have happened, but had no idea what actually happened, which was actually a rare occurrence in the history of such investigations up to this point in history. The final report said, and I quote, "It may truly be said that no more baffling problem has ever been presented for investigation. In the complete absence of any reliable evidence as to either the nature or the cause of the accident of Star Tiger, the court has not been able to do more than suggest possibilities, none of which reach the level even of probability. It is unlikely the Star Tiger ran out of fuel, as calculations showed it should have had enough fuel to go until 6 a.m., approximately 1 hour after the landing time. Engine failure is also improbable because the Tudor Mark IV was a 4-prop plane, known for being able to fly with just 2 or 3 of its motors. All 4 engines failing and causing it to fall are just too highly unlikely to even be considered probable. Well, could it have been structural failure or collapse? Even if the Star Tiger was flying at 2,000 feet, there shouldn't have been any problems with cabin pressure. So the wreckage and passengers all should be there. They should be okay. The only possibility that made sense was simply that the crew forgot they were flying so low at 2,000 feet, and that the altimeters, things that measure altitude, weren't functioning properly at such low altitudes, so it wouldn't have given any warnings either. And they simply flew the craft into the sea before they could correct the mistakes they were making. Alas, these are only possibilities, and the truth is still unknown. While the loss of Star Tiger remains a mystery, the lack of wreckage is not. The sea was becoming rough in the later stages of the flight. The plane was operating in low fuel, and if the plane had to, it was left with hardly any chance to ditch into the sea successfully in the dark. By the time the search craft arrived, which could have been up to 5 to 8 hours after the crash, the wreckage could have easily been swept away from the crash. But what actually happened to it? Where did it go? Why was there no oil slick? Why was there no wreckage? Why are there no people? Why are we unable to find it to this day? Why is there nothing at all? Could it have been aliens? Could it have been weird energies from the ocean causing something to happen, whether it be a time portal or a energy vortex? We may never know. But this cements that there is definitely a pattern in the Bermuda Triangle. So let's go over some of these different theories a little more in depth on what all it could be. First, we have the magnetic anomalies. It is well known that most electronics and all compasses can be interfered with by magnetism. We also know that electromagnetic fields can heavily influence the human body and mentality. And we also know that there are multiple areas of magnetic anomalies inside of the Bermuda Triangle that can cause all these electronics, compasses, and humans themselves to malfunction catastrophically. Another thing, being in the ocean, it could be methane gas. Is the methane gas leaking from the ocean floor, causing large random eruptions? Or is the gas being caused to erupt by explosions in the right places from these vessels or aircraft? It could have been completely coincidental, yet caused the complete disintegration of these vessels. Another theory people like to get into is Atlantis technology, because some claim the lost city of Atlantis lies underneath the Bermuda Triangle with its ridiculously powerful energy crystals. Is that really the case? Were they doing some kind of a major experiment or necessary event with these energy crystals to keep the city of Atlantis going underneath the Bermuda Triangle? And did it just so happen that these vessels seemed to be at the wrong place at the wrong time and were disintegrated by this eruption of energy coming from Atlantis? Aliens. How about aliens? All sorts of odd things have been reported around the Bermuda Triangle. What are the chances that one of multiple reported UFOs had came back and taken these vessels to be studied by life forms we will never understand in our lifetime? Or is there some kind of time vortex? Does something about the fog in the Bermuda Triangle have paranormal effects? Do fog clouds become vortexes, and that's why we lose so many vessels in these triangles? Do they just magically show up in some other place in the timeline of our reality? Or into the timeline of another reality and become just as big of an anomaly at that point in our timeline or whatever timeline as it is in ours? Or is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration right, and there is no statistical evidence of an anomaly in the Bermuda Triangle at all? Is it just another part of the ocean that has been exponentially exaggerated, that sometimes things just happen in? So, is the Bermuda Triangle a paranormal gateway, or simply a region where nature isn't understood? So far in this Triangle Files, we've tackled the Lake Michigan Triangle and the Bermuda Triangle. Leave it below in the comments. What do you think? What do you think is the reason behind all of these disappearances in these different regions? Tune in with us next week to crack open the tomb on our third triangle in the Triangle Files, the Alaskan Triangle. Wednesday, March 18th, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. From the Tomb with Cadoom. Keep it twisted and escape your tomb until we crack mine back open next week. See you Wednesday.